Hello friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. I'm Henry Seltzer, and we want to talk about the new moon that's coming up this weekend, which is on Sunday, which is the 25th of September. And let's go ahead and take a look at the chart right away so we can see what we're talking about. So you should be able to see the chart right here. And here we have the natural chart with Aries rising. And here we have also the new moon, which is right at 2 degrees, almost 3 of Libra, exactly opposite, a degree different than Jupiter. So we have a Jupiter new moon here, the opposition across the Aries Libra axis. So even though this new moon will emphasize Libra, which means balance and understanding things from a mutual perspective, from the standpoint of fairness to everybody. Also, just seeing in terms of relationship, you can see in the natural chart, when we start with Aries, Libra is across the zodiac from Aries. Libra is 7th house in the natural chart, having to do with the other. You know, Aries in the 1st house has to do with your own development, and then in your natal chart, the 7th house has to do with relationship with the other. So we have the other coming in, and we would want to look at also the position of Venus for that reason. Now, Venus is in a very interesting place because it is very close to retrograde Mercury moving toward it. Mercury has gone backwards, started around 8 degrees actually of Libra, which is where Maki, this new planet, one of the 2 nature planets, beyond Pluto, beyond in addition to Eris, we have Maki and Haumea. And Maki is more about an activist, environmental activist agenda, and we've been seeing a lot of that lately. You know, they did finally pass climate change legislation in the U.S. Congress. So that it's very interesting that Mercury started there, and now Mercury is crossed into Virgo going backwards, and it's 27 degrees of Virgo. And this is very interesting as well because we have Pluto, which is just getting ready to station on the 8th of October, so in a couple of weeks. And it is very slow. This is where it stations, 26 degrees in 9 or 7 minutes, something like that. So it's standing still in the sky pretty much, getting ready to station to its retrograde, out of its retrograde movement into station direct, coming up on October 8th, not until then. But we do have in this new moon configuration, we have a very strong position of the ruler of the new moon, Venus, at 25 degrees, conjunct Mercury, pretty much exactly trine to Eris. You could roughly say 25, 27, middle of point is 26, you see. This is in a T-square with also Eris, new planet, referring to soul intention. How can you find your deepest principles and act upon them, act exclusively upon them? That's what Eris represents, a feminine warrior in support of soul intention. And that is opposite to this new planet, Haumea, which is also connection to nature, connection to natural law, connection to right action, right relationship. So these things keep coming up, don't they? I mean, Haumea has a lot to do with truth-telling. I believe that truth-telling is very big on our agenda right now in the zeitgeist. We have disinformation campaigns being waged by various state entities across the world, including Russia and its invasion of Ukraine, including one of the 2 political parties here in this country. They both have a tendency to tell slightly stories that are not perhaps entirely right on the money, but serve an advantage, but one more than the other, I believe. And we do have that issue of what's the truth about these things? Were there top secret documents that shouldn't have been outside of Washington located in Mar-a-Lago? One says no, one says yes. You know, were they declassified, etc.? All these things that keep coming up in terms of what is the truth, what is really being said, what's really going on, what is the fact of the matter. And so I think these are very interesting times in that regard, and each of us have our own understanding of what the truth is, our understanding of what our truth is, our understanding of where we stand and where we're headed, and how we can act upon basically our own individual point of view. You know, that is what's really up for us right now in this zeitgeist, in this timing, this early decade of the 21st century that is unfolding and various ways. So I think it's very important, this T-square to Pluto, that there's a transformation going on. It's a transformation related to our structure. It's been happening. There was the Pluto-Saturn of the beginning of 2020, January 2020, and that's been kind of the hallmark of these times, that we are in the midst of societal transition, societal transformation, trying to find our way, through with climate change, with various different initiatives, with diversity versus exclusion, and all the things that we're dealing with, including there's a vast connection, which is a square connection between Saturn and Uranus. They're approximately only like 3/4 of a degree apart, 45 minutes. And they're standing pretty much like this for the rest of the year. And right now we have Mars at 18 degrees Gemini. We wouldn't want to forget that. It's touching these two planets that are in square with each other, and that do represent, the conservative versus the progressive viewpoint, and you have to have a mix of both. You can't just do any old thing you feel like doing, but on the other hand, innovation is important in your life. You have to find a way to innovate when it becomes necessary to do so. And then try to make it practical, try to reel yourself in, which is the message of Saturn. Mars is trine Saturn, so it does slow things down. Mars itself is getting ready to retrograde. Mars stays in Gemini. It moves as far as 25 degrees of Gemini up here before it retrogrades back, and then it will spend about 7 months in Gemini. It retrogrades on the 30th of October, and then stays in Gemini, because then it'll be moving backwards in Gemini until it turns direct in January. So this is a pretty powerful time of Mars in Gemini, and when it hits 25, it'll be powerful, because guess what? That is also triggering this opposition between Eris and Haumea, T-square to Pluto. Transformation is in the air. That's the major message that I have for you for this new moon that's coming up, and we do have the Mercury retrograde that's lasting until October 2nd. And October 2nd, we will have Mercury standing still in the sky in Virgo, and I'll just show you that chart real quickly because it's a first quarter moon as well. So here we have the station of Mercury on October 2nd, and it's at 24 degrees. It's opposite Neptune, which again gets into this whole question of what is truth and what is fantasy. It is it's trine to Pluto, and it is touching off this T-square between Eris and Haumea. It's square to Pluto. Pluto being still retrograde at this point, but having only less than a week to go before it will station to direct motion at the same degree and minute, 26 degrees of Capricorn in 7 minutes. So this is a pretty powerful time when October begins and when Mercury turns around, but we still have, the last couple of weeks till Mercury recovers where it was, which is 9 degrees of Libra, 8 degrees of Libra actually. And this square, this first opening square, first quarter square between the Sun and Moon at that point, October 2nd, will be lined up with Maki Maki, which is all about taking action as necessary to embody the values that you have, especially social justice values, especially environmental values. So this is all a big change time heading into these elections here in the United States, midterm elections, November 8th. Big eclipse. The eclipse features Saturn and Uranus square with each other, which is progressive versus conservative viewpoints. A little bit too much progressive for some of the people, and there's that, conservative backlash. And then the conservative backlash is a little bit too much conservative for some of the people, and they want to see more progressive values enshrined into action. So depending on who you vote for. So it's very important to vote in this upcoming election. No matter what your principles are, you have to vote for them, because that is what's going to change things one way or the other for the rest of this decade, probably, including environmental changes that need to happen. And so going back to the new moon itself, here we are. It's coming up. It's a fresh start. It's a fresh start for relationship. We are going to see at the time of the full moon that Venus will be opposite Chiron in Aries, so that's a bit of relationship drama, which will happen during this 30-day cycle coming up. I'll show you that real quick. So here's the full moon, That will be at 16 degrees, but then you see by that time Venus has moved to 13 degrees of Libra, right opposite this Chiron moon conjunction. So to me, that signals that there will be a certain amount of relationship adjustments going on at that time. We will all be dealing with that kind of thing as we go through this whole 30-day cycle. And it's very important. I started by mentioning Jupiter. Jupiter stays in the early degrees of Aries throughout October. And it is really kind of a beneficent, it's called the greater positive or beneficent planet. And it'll be featured this whole 30-day cycle in Aries. So we have a bit of an optimism, a bit of a chance to make things happen in a positive way for ourselves and for our society. So that's about what I had. Transition back to the other viewpoint here. And just say that I'll leave you with some hopefulness, as I just indicated, and also the idea that we really have to vote our values, vote in one way or another by our actions, by our money, by our things that we espouse, things that we discuss, things that we articulate, and where we actually vote at the polls in this country, from the U.S., in November. So best of luck with all that, and I'll be talking to you again soon when we pick this up again. Thanks for listening.